This will either be the absolute coolest or dumbest thing I have ever done to a vehicle. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Talon and I make new videos every single week. So if you like what you see here, consider clicking the like button, clicking subscribe. We're putting portals on a 4th gen Tacoma today. We're just gonna jump straight into this. I'm here with Dwight from Mountain Yotas. Known Dwight for a few years now, and you are kind of the master of this. I've seen you and Mountain Yotas install more portals on any truck than ever before. So give me a little bit of your history with 74 weld and just portals in general.
Yeah, man, we wanted to dive in first on the portal game because I had a hunch that this was gonna be game changing, not just for Toyotas, but off-roading in general, because they've been around for a long time with Unimogs, military vehicles. And as soon as they became available for Toyota platforms at a consumer level, I knew I had to be part of it because ground clearance, torque, and all the other benefits that come from portals is huge. It's all stuff that I want.
Let's actually talk about that quick. What are portals? I'm gonna act like you guys have never heard of them before. Portal axles will essentially give you like 3-4 different things. Ground clearance, you're gonna be able to run a larger tire. With this specific portal from 74 weld, we're talking a 22% gear reduction. So you're re-gearing, lifting, you're doing a lot of changes to a truck, but the cool thing is you can put this onto a completely stock platform. This truck is no longer very close to stock, and these guys have already jumped on it. We've got the front and rear already in. We're kind of buttoning things up now, but there's a lot of advantages to this, and you guys are gonna see a lot more of it here pretty soon.
So yeah, the big thing about having a gear reduction at your hub is it's the end of your drive line, right? So doing a gear reduction on your differentials, there's still a lot of components post differential before it hits your tire. So there's an advantage to the gear reduction occurring at the end of the drive line. And then the fact that you have your lift height coming from the portal box itself, essentially this is your drive shaft. So there's, you know, a circle at the end of the portal box here. That's your drive gear. And then the center of your hub is 3.9 inches below the center of that. So that's where that lift comes from, which means a few different things that are super beneficial for off-roading specifically, and just ride quality specifically. One, you don't have to preload the heck out of your coilovers to get lift height, which means you get more down travel, because the more preload you put in there, the less down travel you have.
Yeah, and the way my truck is currently sitting on the 37s, we did add some preload to that, so we're probably actually gonna back it off. That way the truck isn't a monster truck. We're gonna bring that preload basically entirely off, and then that's gonna give me more travel than the truck even had when I rolled in here this morning.
Yep, and the portals won't affect wheel travel whatsoever. We get a lot of comments about how the trucks don't flex when they have portals. It's totally not true. I don't know if it's an optical illusion or...
I think it is, because it's so much room in between what typically looks like flex, either stuffing or down travel. People think it's not flexing, but it's doing the same. And in this case, it's going to be flexing more.
Yeah, down for sure. Yeah. So wheel travel's unaffected. It'll be the same as if you had Fox 3.0s, which are super baller. These just rock double internal bypass shocks in a 3-inch diameter. Killer stuff. So it's going to pair up nicely with this. Ride quality is going to improve from that. The lift height, though, being there as well, allows you to have closer to factory geometry on your other suspension components.
Yeah, so like Dwight said, it's gonna be less strain on the drivetrain, and a big portion of that is because now with this type of lift, the CV axle is gonna be sitting a lot flatter. And I don't wanna get too technical. If you know this stuff, you probably already know it, but you actually did a really great video, which I've watched when I was thinking about purchasing these. It's a big investment. They're very expensive, but we're doing it.
Yeah, and you know, the expense relative to the performance and the functionality you get from that expense. You mentioned it's, you know, you get a re-gear built in, you get lift height built in. So if you are off-roading a truck and you want to be able to daily drive it, cruise on the highway at 85 still, drive across the country, and then have something that can do like solid axle type trails, this is the only thing out there that you can do. A lot of the comments that we see too, they talk about how like solid axle vehicles are better, right? Like why not just solid axle swap it at that price? They're $17,000 and $3,000 to install. You're not gonna find anything that you can solid axle swap on the modern Toyota lineup for anywhere near $20,000, and especially retaining like independent front suspension driving characteristics on the highway, safety, sensors, electronic steering. You'd have to like hang the rack out of this somehow. it just doesn't make any sense. And then you also have ABS, so you retain all of those things with portals. It's just kind of my favorite mod for my use case.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of information that I'm putting out here on portals and my personal thoughts on them. We're gonna dive into the install, what comes with the 74 weld kit in particular, and there's a lot more coming. So let's just jump right into it and then do some off-roading.
Heck yeah, let's go.
All right, guys, installation time. This is not an installation video, but I do want to give you guys a little bit of the process so you know what you're getting yourselves into. First and foremost, I would recommend that most people do not attempt this themselves unless you have a lot of experience with automotive stuff. I have some decent experience, but I knew for a fact I didn't have the tools, and nor do I have a lift to get the truck up to work on it properly, so I took it to the experts. The guys at Mountain Yotas have installed portals on a ton of Tacomas, probably more than anyone that I know in the area, maybe even in the country. They have produced some insane builds around portals, so I knew I was in good hands with them. So what do you get in this 74 weld kit? Of course, you have the billet aluminum portal axles, big portal boxes, front and rear, and basically everything you need to get them on your vehicle. We're talking things like the larger rotors, as well as caliper mounts, which are going to be dependent on the vehicle that they are made for. You have 4340 heat treated rear full float axle shafts, because we're actually removing the stock axle shafts for the rear. There are also catch cans, tubings, brake lines, because you do need to extend the brake lines a little bit, as well as all of the hardware you need to put this together, and some oil to fill all of your brand new portals. Now, the process to me seemed pretty straightforward because I kind of nerded out about how portals work and the efficiency of them and how you can actually get them installed the proper way. So for the rear, you of course remove the rear axles, assemble everything, and then slide the axles into the differential. Luckily, you don't really have to do anything to that diff. You're simply replacing the axle shafts and putting portals on the outside of your axle. The front two portal axles is where things get a little bit more intrusive, because you actually have to grind down a small portion of your CV axle that goes into the actual portal housing. I'm not going to say that this is irreversible, putting portals on your truck, but it does make it a little bit harder if you wanted to revert back to stock. I'm hoping that is not the case. I mentioned that you can do this to a completely stock vehicle, but one thing to note is that you may, in some cases, need supporting mods like the proper offset wheel, as well as some other things that I actually ran into. One thing that I purchased to kind of perfect this setup were the Camberg upper control arms. These have Heim joints in them, and it's going to make my adjustment for alignment much easier down the road. One thing that I noticed for the rear is that the sway bar end link is a little bit short, and I could get more performance out of the truck and this entire setup if I got something a little bit fancier, a little bit longer, maybe something with an adjustable Heim joint in it that will give me more down travel, maybe like half an inch to an inch in the future. So I will definitely work on that as I start testing these things out. All said and done, this entire install took about 1 day at Mountain Yotas. And again, I'm really thankful that they were able to work on the truck. They put 2 guys on the project, and they have installed plenty of portals in the past. If I tried to do this myself, it would take me probably like a week, let's be honest. We started at about 9 o'clock in the morning, and we're wrapping things up around 5, 6 o'clock. And we got the truck its first alignment, and then it was ready to hit the road. I decided to kick off my break-in period doing the things that I typically do with this truck, so what better than a road trip? I really wish I would have filmed my initial impressions, because Dwight was driving my truck. He hadn't driven a 4th gen hybrid on portals before, and him and I just kind of drove around near the shop. We were hitting speed bumps, just kind of giggling the whole time at how good this setup actually feels. I have actually never driven a truck on portals before, so I went for a test ride, or I should say a test ride along in his non-hybrid 4th gen. And the first thing that I noticed is simply how tall the truck actually sits. It feels like you are on stilts, and depending on the suspension setup and everything, the truck can feel pretty much just as comfortable as it did before portals. So we drove around. He was getting a feel for my truck and how everything drove, and he seemed pretty impressed with it. Then I got in the driver's seat and took the truck home that night. I was pretty much immediately blown away with how similar the truck actually felt. From an initial impression, the truck just felt taller and maybe a little bit wider. The ride quality feels almost identical, and I was really surprised with that. I was thinking, man, I'm gonna put portals on the truck and it's just gonna ride awful. I'm ruining the factory feel and how the truck feels right now, and I'm very happy to report that this thing drives great. So one thing about this setup is that, yes, the truck is 3.88 inches taller and 2.75 inches wider. So the truck went up and it went out. You would think that that would kind of increase your center of gravity and make things feel a little bit tippy. Obviously, going out a little bit wider makes it feel a little bit more stable, but we are a lot taller than before. If you think about how the truck is set up though, we have portal boxes on the axles, and a very large majority of the weight is actually below the axle. So yes, we are taller, but we're also adding weight down low, literally as low as you possibly can on the truck. So it kind of makes it like, think about it like a tower shape. All of the weight is down low and it's wider. Yes, we are taller, but the truck feels really stable, and we're gonna see how it feels off-road too when we get into some like off-camber and rock crawly situations. One of the negatives, I guess if you consider this a negative, is that I do notice that the steering is much heavier. Obviously, there's more weight down low, and I can feel it in the steering. However, it's not a problem, at least from what I know on the 4th gens. People who are running portal axles on 3rd gens often report that they have to upgrade their steering rack, and I know a few people, Dwight included, who are running this setup on a 4th gen, and I believe their steering racks are completely fine. So yes, it feels a little bit heavier, but that's also because I'm running a huge 37-inch Firestone tire. It's much wider than before, and that is really the only like negative, if you can call it that, at least that I'm feeling as of right now. I've already put 400 miles on this truck, and I have about 100 miles to go for this break-in period. It has been 100% on-road up until this point. Did some highway driving, currently doing some back road driving, and again, the truck feels incredible. There is a lot more torque. A 22% gear reduction while running a 37-inch tire makes it the equivalent of essentially a 31-inch tire. So the truck has basically stock feeling power other than all of the other things that I've done to the truck. And from a dead stop, if I stomp on it in sport mode, the hybrid and the turbo, everything kind of spools up and it will actually chirp the tires when shifting into 2nd gear. So a ton of torque. That is really going to help when we get off-road and do a little bit of crawly stuff. And so far I am loving this setup. The truck looks absolutely insane now. I thought the truck looked really good before, but now it just has a completely different appearance to it. One thing that I do want to mention that I'll probably dive into a little bit more in some future videos is the wheel choice. I went from a positive 25 Black Rhino Bahari up to a positive 35 Black Rhino Stadium wheel. The reason I needed to go more positive on the offset is because, of course, the portals are pushing everything out. It is a 17 by 8.5 inch wheel. I could probably up that to a 9-inch wheel in the future, but the reason I had to go more positive was to bring the tires and the wheels a little bit closer to the truck. The portals are pushing them out and it would stick way out past my fenders. I think the ideal setup would be between where I'm at now, a 35, and maybe up to like a 45. Finding the proper wheel fitment for this was a little bit difficult because I've only had a few people to talk to who are running portals on a truck like this. And I actually really like the simplistic design of the Stadiums. I think it fits the truck really well. It kind of takes your eyes off of what previously was a machined wheel, which was kind of like the highlight of the truck. Some people don't like machined wheels. I'm a fan of it. Typically not a fan of just black wheels anymore. However, these are simple, effective, they look great, and it kind of diverts your attention away from just the wheels, and it allows you to kind of see the truck with different eyes. And that's coming from me, who I'm looking at this truck every single day. So we're taller and wider. We are re-geared 22% lower. So there is more torque. The axles and drive lines and everything are in basically their stock configuration. So way less stress than doing a really tall suspension lift. That weight that we've added is down low as possible on the truck, and I was still getting about 16 miles per gallon driving on the highway between like 65 and 80 miles per hour for about 5 or 6 hours yesterday. Now, it wouldn't be a complete break-in period, in my opinion, if we didn't take the truck off-road. So I'm heading out to a trail that I've ran with this truck in its stock configuration on 35s. We now have the Fox FRS 3.0 suspension, which we actually have not changed yet. We did not back any preload off. This is just like break-in testing phase for me to see how the truck performs, and then I will go back to Mountain Yotas and dial things in just a little bit more. We'll probably realign it. We'll add a little bit more adjustment to the heim joints on the upper control arms. That way we can get the alignment perfectly dialed and still have room to move things around. I already know this truck is going to be insanely capable for an independent front suspension truck now, but we're gonna take it easy and we're gonna see how this thing performs on a trail that I am pretty familiar with.
All right, guys, we are doing it. Solo wheeling mission with the new portals on the truck. I aired down to about 20 PSI. Could go a little bit lower, but we're giving it an easy break in here. This trail I have done before, really not that technical. This is rated about a 4 out of 10 on Onyx, and I have the truck in 4 low already. So instead of just pushing the front portals around, we're actually sending power through them now. 4 low, stabilizer disconnect. I'm gonna test out the crawl control, the MTS, make sure everything still works, because we still have basically all of the factory components. From the time I aired up about a mile ago, I was just kind of like hauling up through here, and I realized that I don't really have to pick lines on a trail like this when the truck sits as tall as it does. You can see how much freaking ground clearance I have now. I think either my lower shock mounts in the rear or my diff will be the lowest point. Since the shock mounts are close to the tire, it doesn't really matter all that much. I still do not have full skids on here, but I do have sliders, and I legit don't think it's going to be an issue at all. I already did a little pre-inspection here after the road trip, and everything is looking good in all 4 corners. No drips or leaks, anything like that. All of the paint pen marks look to be in the proper location, and we are going to test out all of this ground clearance here. Sitting on the ground in front of the truck, if I just like duck my head a little bit, the truck could just basically drive right over top of me, which is insane. The truck is still able to flex exactly how it did before, and eventually, if I decide that we do need to adjust my suspension a little bit, we can take out the preload in the front and I can get some more travel in the front. And then in here, that sway bar link right there, that is what I was talking about. If I got one longer or adjustable, I could get even more down travel in the rear. I won't need it for where I'm at today, but it's nice to know that we can make this even better.
So right off the bat in 4 low, this thing has so much torque. Like, I'm going up a section that would kind of feel a little bit steep, and the hybrid powertrain definitely has enough power to do basically everything that I ask of it, but now it just makes it so much more drivable off-road. The torque is immediate. It is much more prominent than it was before the whole re-gear with the portals, and couple that with the ground clearance and really not having to pick any like technical line on stuff like this, it kind of makes me want to just do some like goofy stuff with the truck. If there are big boulders in the road, I would typically like navigate around them. But with this setup, I can just put my tire up against it and pretty much drive right over it, something up to maybe about like 2 feet. Like right here is a little bit of rocky stuff on the side. There's no reason of me driving over this, but I'm leaning here at about a 28, almost 30 degree angle, and I thought because the truck is taller that it would feel really tippy, but since that weight is down low, the truck still feels planted and it's wider too. So going over stuff like that makes it feel really comfortable. And when I get to a point where I actually have to put the truck in that situation, I now know that it can handle it. We're testing this stuff out incrementally, still breaking in the gears. And again, this is probably the best way to do it. So I'm a couple miles back this trail now, and I'm realizing that I should have picked something way harder. This is like barely stretching this truck's legs, but right here is a prime example. It doesn't look impressive on camera at all. And honestly, the truck's gonna walk right up this, but there's a clear out to my right, and without the ground clearance, kind of how the truck was sitting before, I probably would have taken that route. But now, if I just go nice and slow, there's so much torque and so much ground clearance, the truck just walks right up it. I'm still kind of getting used to how tall this truck sits because I could have ran that way faster. You can kind of see on the rocks here how many people have just like scraped up over this, probably bashing lower shock mounts and stuff like that, but we got ground clearance for days now. Here's a pretty good example. Clear route behind me. This is totally optional, and this is going to put my like front bumper area to the test. This is pretty large, probably like 4 feet from the lowest point up to the top there. Perfect test for crawl control. Let's see if all the typical Toyota features still work on this thing. You will have to pardon my parking sensors. I'm sure they're gonna make a lot of noise here. I will probably bump my winch shackle if I had to guess, because it drops down here. Oh, little bump. Sensors are going off. All right, let's go into crawl control now in the lowest mode, and we'll just let the truck do its thing. Tires going up. Hopefully I don't bang in the middle here. It's feeling okay. Tires are touching in the rear, it looks like. And we're up and over. My truck absolutely would not have been able to do that before without a lot of convincing, maybe a little bit of damage. I have no idea how that looked on camera, but I mean, this is a pretty big ledge there. Here's another pretty optional side. We got some steps here. It'd be really easy to just kind of drive up there, but this side we have a little bit more of a challenge, so let's just try to drive right up this. Everything looks so freaking small on camera, but for a size reference, these are 37-inch tires. We know the crawl control works, so I'm just gonna drive this one myself. Hopefully I don't bump my winch shackle again. Nah, I don't think it's even close. I do have my little hammock mount in the hitch there, so that is something that could potentially drag, but no. Nope, no issues, because we're on portals now. I feel like as this truck evolves, everything I do just becomes more and more of a cheat code, from the 35s to the Fox factory race series stuff, and then to 37s, and now the portals.
Is this a good size reference here for you guys? I don't know. So a little bit of crawly stuff there. I mean, this thing is just super impressive. I don't really know what else to say about it right now. The suspension still completely rocks. This is the best suspension I've probably ever put on a vehicle. So when I throw it back in 4 high, I can still kind of mob through the desert. There are race trucks out there running portals for things like the Baja and all of these crazy desert races. So although my gearing is reduced, you still have plenty of torque and horsepower to actually get on it, and this thing just like floats over everything. Doing 45 miles an hour now through sand and a little bit of rock. 50, just ripping through the desert. One thing that I thought would feel a little bit different is the braking, and it did take a second for the brake pads to actually seat up to the new rotors, but once those were mated properly, it feels pretty much exactly how it did before we did this installation. I currently have my suspension set full soft, that way it's nice and cushy as I was going over stuff. For faster driving though, I would probably crank things up a bit, make it a little bit more stiffer, a little bit more compliant as you're like cooking into corners and stuff. Not really sure what is coming up next. There are a lot of trails to choose from out here. I think I just chose the wrong one. Well, let's see where this one goes, I guess. That was a whole lot of wheeling and a whole lot of fun. I think that was a pretty good break-in period for these portals. And I've got about 20 miles until the 500 mark where you should do your first oil change on all 4 corners. So that'll give me enough time to get back to town and not do the oil change in a remote location like this. Although I think you could. I think it's going to be pretty easy. Let's do a little inspection under here and see how things are looking. Just a little dusty and nice and dry. Take a peek on the right. Again, looking really good on this side. All the cables seem to be in place. Nothing seems to be rubbing. And that's a pretty tight fitment with these 17-inch wheels on here. Now coming into the front here, we have plenty of clearance on the reservoir hose there with these new Camberg uppers. Looks like the breather line here has been staying in place. And the front right portal looks pretty good. You can see how tight it is with the clearance there on the upright. And then over on this side, I think everything is looking pretty good. One other piece of this puzzle that I have not shown you guys is the catch can. Both of the breather tubes from the portals run right up here, and then there's a little kind of a dipstick on the top there, so you can see if you need to empty it. And if you do, you can just unscrew it from the bottom. And then coming back around to the rear of the truck, you can see the catch can hanging down right about there, just protected by the exhaust, and right in front of that rear cross member. So really easy to service that to make sure your catch cans are clean. So I would say that this install and first break-in period was a huge success. I have a whole new love for this truck, and that's typically how things go. As you modify it to make it your own, to make a vehicle do exactly what you want, you tend to like it a little bit more. I did leave this truck pretty much OEM plus for the first year of ownership. I, of course, had lights and racks, stuff for camping, but factory suspension and a little bit larger of a tire size that required pretty much no cutting. The reason for doing that is because I wanted to show you guys what a stock vehicle is capable of. And these Toyotas, although a lot of people are still a little bit indifferent on the drivetrain and everything, to me, they've been proving to be very solid and reliable vehicles. I thought more people would be interested in what these trucks can do stock, and I put a lot of information out there, but I decided I'm just gonna do exactly what I want with this truck from now on, and that's when everything else came into play. The Fox Factory Race Series 3.0, the 37-inch Firestone MT2 tires, and now portals. I've been curious about them for a long time, and just after this first 500 miles, I think I'm pretty much hooked on them. So my next steps are going to be head back into town, figure out how to change out the oil on these, and then the break-in period is pretty much complete at that point, so I think it's time to run some harder trails, and I'm really excited to do that. I generally like to take pretty good care of my vehicles. I don't like putting them in situations that they don't need to be in vehicle sympathy, but these portals just took things up to a whole nother level. I hate the word game changer, but that is exactly what these are. We're gonna run some harder trails, and then eventually I will head back to Denver for a little bit of a checkup, maybe do some suspension tweaks, and we'll figure out what the next steps are gonna be with the 4th Gen Tacoma. Again, I gotta give a huge thank you to the guys at Mountain Yotas for being the portal experts, taking care of me and my truck. The install has been incredible, and there's gonna be a lot more videos to come. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and if there's anything you want to know or see me do with these 74 weld portals, let me know in the comments down below, and I will fulfill those requests pretty soon. If you're new to this channel, consider clicking subscribe. I make new videos every single week. As always, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.